Bobby, that was like we planned that. Okay, great. You did fantastic. How are y'all this morning? All right, so I take very little responsibility for this sermon, whether it's coherent or not. Erica is usually my proofreader, but I finished around 1 a.m. last night, so she was gone at that point. So we'll see. And this might come as a bit of a surprise to some of you all, given that you probably know some of my interests and activities outside of church. You know that I'm passionate about outdoor adventure sports, and I've done everything from whitewater kayaking to rock climbing to mountain climbing, and I've even jumped out of a plane. And yet the truth is, I don't really like taking chances. I, Jim Engel, have a fairly low tolerance for risk. When Erica and we were on our honeymoon, and our car broke down in Reno, Nevada, and we had to spend the night there. So we figured, we probably should go into a casino. We spent $5. I've never quit a job, even an awful one, without having another one lined up. And before I kayak in New River or run a waterfall, I watch countless videos on YouTube to make sure, and then I go online to make sure the water level is perfect and that the weather is going to be good. And then I pick my friends' brains for information. I'll call them and hey, I'm running this New River. What do you think? And then I find good people to take me down. I'm a pretty careful person. How many of you would say that you like taking risks? Anybody out there? Anybody like taking risks? Okay, now that surprises me. Actually, oh, there we go. All right, there we go. We got a couple. I expected more than that, but that's interesting to me. How many people would say that they like to play it safe? Sometimes it is really hard for me because I personally tend to be more cautious. Sometimes it's hard for me to understand God. For example, I want to take a look at today's gospel lesson from Matthew. Can anybody sum up, in a couple sentences, what happens in the parable that Jesus tells us about this vineyard owner and the hired day laborers? What happens? Anybody got a short spark notes? They all get the same pay no matter how long they work. He hires 5 sets of workers, right? Who all work different lengths of time and pays them all the same. They get the same regardless of how long or how hard they have worked. Who here's got siblings or small children? And we know that is not fair. And here's the part where I cringe, because I'm reading this story that Jesus tells, and I'm already thinking about tomorrow. When the sun rises the next day on this vineyard, who stands to lose the most by paying these 5 sets of workers equally? Who stands to lose the most? The owner, right? I mean, who's going to show up the next day at the crack of dawn and work as hard as they can to make the same paycheck as the worker who shows up an hour before quitting time? Who's going to work for this guy tomorrow or the next day? This generosity makes no sense. It's an incredible gift and a crazy risk. This guy's going to go out of business, right? And this story becomes even more risky when we realize that Jesus isn't giving us instructions about how to run a corporation or how to be a Fortune 500 CEO. Matthew 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like. This crazy, risky, foolish parable is about how God chooses to operate. This is about God's grace, about God's forgiveness, about God's salvation. God is taking an enormous gamble. Whether you've been here 50 years or 15 minutes, God loves you all the same. Whether you can recite Luther's small catechism by heart, or if you're mostly just excited to come up here and get a glass of grape juice this morning, you receive the same forgiveness, free and full. Whether you were baptized 25 years ago to make grandma happy, or you were baptized and you have lived that baptism every day and been in church and served on councils, on committees, both of you are going to the same heaven. Do you see where this parable is taking us? We are all too familiar with the way our world works. We know how it works, right? I do this for you, you do this for me. That's how politics works. That's how friendships work. That's how businesses run. That's how marriages function. And Jesus still says, for the kingdom of heaven is like. God is different. God is doing something new and risky. I mean, it's absolutely nuts if you think about it. God is betting against God's self. God is going against God's past experiences with us. God is going against human nature. Since the very beginning, since the garden, since the beginning of time, religions and relationships have been based on fairness and equal exchange. I do this, and you do that. And Jesus of Nazareth comes along and turns that way we think the world works upside down and inside out. And he ends with, so the last will be first and the first will be last. What if our God is not interested in equal exchange or fairness? What if our God instead is seeking to transform us? Stay with me here. Look at the words that Jesus uses when talking about the last group of laborers. Why are you standing here idle all day? Because no one has hired us. Because no one wants us. Who are hired last? We know, right? The same people who are picked last on the playground or at gym class. The least desirable, the elderly, the very young, the minorities, the women, the immigrants, the disabled, the undereducated, or the overeducated. And Jesus invites those people in and says, I'm going to treat you the same as everyone else. We've already talked about the risks that the owner is taking by doing this. Who will show up at dawn tomorrow? I like to think that this last group will. This collection of broken, unwanted, stigmatized people. They show up at dawn out of joy and thanksgiving for what they've first been given. They are there, ready to do all they can because they have finally found a place where they are valued and they are wanted. And suddenly, they are transformed. Suddenly, these nobodies are somebodies. But it doesn't stop there. This is what else I like to see. Other workers see that these people who were once ignored and unwanted now have a place. And they too want to be part of a place like that. Because I realize that I'm not always going to be young. And that I'm going to need a place to work when I get older someday. A place to be wanted when I'm no longer wanted. So they too roll into the vineyard at dawn, and they too are transformed by God's love, grace, and generosity. This is how I understand you. This is how I understand the folks here at St. Peter's Lutheran Church. The gospel is preached without any admission charge, right? Christ's font of salvation and the table of forgiveness are open and waiting for any and all who want it and need it. We are called to be a different kind of place, a risky place, that doesn't seek to emulate our world, but seeks to transform it. We are called to be what the world could be. And this is why the community garden hands out fresh veggies to those who walk by. It's a magical thing. Do you want some? You're just giving that to me? Yeah. And that's why we have now two neighborhood girls, Alexis and Jakaila. Some of you have met them. They stop in to weed, to water, to tend the garden because they want to be a part of that magic. They want to be a part of that world. They have been transformed. This is why our outdoor leadership program that we run on Sundays and Mondays, it's 100% free to all participants. And now after going through the program for 2 years, Katie has volunteered to help New Youth. We had hoped to pay them. We don't have any money, but she said I would still want to be a part of it to develop leadership skills. She has been transformed. This is why we don't charge local groups to use this building that we have been blessed with. If you're only here on Sundays, you might not know groups such as 4-H, service sororities, drug and alcohol educators, art programs, cancer fundraisers, and more use our buildings, lives being transformed. Perhaps in the end I'm wrong. Maybe God isn't gambling on us, but rather is God is betting that we can be transformed through love, grace, and forgiveness into who we were always supposed to be. You are forgiven. You are loved. You are saved. Deal with it. How will you live out these truths this week in your homes, in your lives, and at your jobs? Will your words about a coworker or family member be transformed? Will your anger at someone you perceive to be your enemy be transformed? Will your negative thoughts and shame about past wrongs and mistakes that you have made be transformed? We are invited to live into tomorrow today. Thanks be to God and amen.